Yo, check that out. How you doing, people? Good to see you all. It is Tuesday evening. The Premier League is back. My screen is frozen. I don't know what's going on. Let me see if I can save that again. I think we're good now. Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? Welcome to the only place in town where you want to be if you're a Tottenham fan, where you want some insight, some interesting data, some details, some facts, not opinions. As much as people like to dress up their opinions as facts when it comes to finance and when it comes to most of the stuff that I talk about with Daniel Levy, it's essentially just a fact-based game. I'm not telling anyone ever how to feel about Daniel Levy, but what I will not tolerate in my presence is people who just masquerade as fact givers that are anything but. And I couldn't help it last night, but get a little bit rattled with old Lubo, my man. I love Lubo. Much like Brian Daigle, much like Saba, much like these people who I often in the past have had rows with. It's all in good nature. It's all good jest. But, you know, at the same time, you've got to call a spade at times, people. And, you know, you got to like separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to the facts versus the fiction. People who say we are not a football club. Sorry, this is a football club. We're not accountants, yet have spent the previous half an hour before my arrival talking about the figures. It's like, as soon as you come on and go, well, what you just said isn't true, it's patently wrong, you've misread or you're misinforming people or whatever, here's what actually is going on. Then suddenly the goalposts are moved. And look, it is what it is. I know no one wants to kind of sort of suffer an ego dent or whatever. And look, it is what it is. But I love them all. Problem is, guys, is that I have conversations with these people backstage after the shows. I have conversations with these people on the phone every week. And when they say things that I know to be inaccurate with how to read accounts, I correct them, not with like an attempt to try to embarrass them, like I might have done last night a little bit with Lubo, calling him out for how he, you know, was rooting for our relegation. But like when it's just a one-on-one, I go, no, like you missed. That's not how it works, mate. This is how it works. And they go, oh, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. And then the next time that you see them on a stream, they're saying the things that they now know not to be the case. And so like I just can't. Because I feel like there's a responsibility. Obviously, you're going to get things wrong, right? Obviously, I get things wrong. Everyone gets things wrong. And especially if you're reading things that are, you know, headline numbers, talking points, the devil's in the detail, etc. And as long as your intention isn't to misinform, as long as you're saying things with the right like mindset and stuff, but obviously people make mistakes. None of us are really paid to do any of this shit. So I get it. But like if you know something to be inaccurate and you're still pushing it around, it's weird. And then as soon as that gets called out, then the conversation pivots to this is a football club, not an accounting session when we were on the stream because of the fact that the numbers were out. Everyone wants to be an accountant until they realize that their accounting skills aren't quite up to scratch. I don't know. Guys, I hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things you love. But listen, what we have got for you tonight, I don't know, this show is not going to go down the conspiracy route, right? But if you are familiar with Alex Jones, one of his adverts, one of his like promotional segments is he says the mainstream, something I'm paraphrasing here, but something like the mainstream news, the mainstream media represent yesterday's lies as news today. We bring you tomorrow's news today or something. And it's a wonderful, wonderful phrase. And listen, again, I'm never someone that wants to give themselves a pat on the back, but I've got to be entirely honest, man. The amount of times recently that I'm seeing things that I've been saying for ages, and then like people like Stefan Borson, the finance guys, they're coming out and saying it for the first time today. And I'm like, I feel like if you want tomorrow's news today, maybe you should pay attention to the Spurs talk show, especially when it comes to like predicting like the wild shit that's going on. Because today's episode is called Tottenham's Levy must adapt to the reality of football. The Levy-nomics has to adapt. And Chelsea's figures were out, right? And within them, there are all of the things that we've spoken about on this channel ad nauseum. When everyone else was saying Chelsea are doing it by the book and they're finding a way, and Daniel Levy is is just, how is it that these guys can do it and Daniel Levy can't and all that stuff? Well, once again, the confirmed notion today or yesterday is that Chelsea got away with FFP and PSR. They would otherwise be in breach of FFP and PSR if it wasn't for obviously we all know about this for a while now, but they sold Chelsea's ladies football team to the first or to the men's to the club, right? They basically sold it back to themselves and got £200 million on the books. And this was all over TalkSport like it was breaking news. And Ali McCoy was saying it makes a mockery of the whole system, which is something we've been talking about on Spurs Talk Show forever. And look, the natural common next step for me, as I've said 1,000 times on this channel and on Sean Butler TV, and when Johnny and I get together on Football Link, we've spoken about it ad nauseum as well, is that Chelsea are not the only team that could be doing this. They're the only team that has been doing it for the largest part, and for the not just now, but they've been doing it since all the way back with Roman Abramovich, from when FFP and PSR first came in. I did a video 18 months ago, maybe it was, or a year ago, forever ago, about Roman Abramovich's sexy PA, whose name escapes me. Someone in the comments, let me know if you can figure it out. I haven't got time to be searching online and monologuing with you. But he paid her in property in Chelsea flats so that he didn't have to pay her on the books. And so that was another way of like misrepresenting the numbers in the early days of FFP. Now, we know firsthand that all of these things can continue to happen because the Premier League lawmakers are completely inept at making a set of rules that is not entirely easy to find loopholes. They're not even loopholes. They're like loopholes. The biggest loopholes are like you could get a blue whale through them. They are so big, so easy to dance through because there is no inability for them to commit and curtail third-party transactions of selling your left foot to your right foot, your big toe to on your left foot to your right foot and loaning it back, right? It's so easy to do. Johnny and I did videos about this a year and a half ago with regards to the potential for people just to trade players that come through each other's youth teams at X amount of value that's 5-6 times bigger than the nominal value on the books because you get to amortize the sale or amortize the purchase over 5 years, but you get to recognize the sale immediately as full-term profitability. All of those things were easy peasy for people like myself, and Johnny, and everyone else that just has got like 2 brain cells between their ears to think of their way. I've got 15 other ways that they can still jump through, but you don't even need to. You don't even need to have the other 15 because they haven't closed the current loopholes. It's a joke. The only thing that will stop Chelsea doing this again this year to affect next year's books is if they've run out of assets that can literally be sold and moved onto the books. The whole hotel thing was laughable because not only did they sell the hotel to themselves, they also allowed all of the income that comes from the hotels to also go in the direction of the Chelsea book, right? And look, what does this all mean, right? First and foremost, it means, well, we're going to come to Tottenham in a minute, but what it does mean is that you will never see a team that is owned by a multi-club ownership or a billionaire owner, of which there are more than 50% of the Premier League that have that situation, where the smartest minds in the room are figuring out ways in which they can dance around the truth. If you have owners that have the willingness, the ability, and the appetite for it, then this will continue ad nauseum. Every team that has a women's team can sell that team to themselves. The loopholes still exist. They haven't been closed. I would imagine that the Premier League will try to close them as long as the big 4 or 5 that are creating their cartel where they're starting to pull more and more teams across. Then, and we spoke about this before, whilst I was a little bit inaccurate or misread the intentions of the intended rule change around anchoring, around how you can utilize, just buying the best players from the smallest teams, loaning them back. That wouldn't actually work. But there's a million other loopholes that the anchoring rule doesn't account for. None of these things, for what it's worth, are methodologies to sidestep the UEFA rules, which are very simple. UEFA rule is incredibly simple, and it's almost beautiful in its simplicity, in as much as it's 70% of your revenue as of this year, as of this season, 70% of your revenue gets to go, or no more than 70% can go on the combination of amortized fees, agents' fees, and player salaries, and your coaches' salaries. And so you can't raise the revenue that way that they can do the other way. That you can't raise the revenue from the £200 million sales, right? That doesn't work for that particular system. It's footballing revenues divided by squad cost ratios. And so I believe that Aston Villa will be in trouble, but that's why Aston Villa have to do what they had to do. That's Aston Villa's got 98% thresholds, but on their squad cost rules, and the fact that they're participating in Europe probably more than they thought they would is problematic for them in that much. But the reason why they aren't able to sell their left foot to their right foot is because it doesn't affect them. That won't help them in a European situation. But what will help them is relationships that they happen to have with Saudi Arabia, where they can sell John Duran, who's not worth anything like 80 million euros or 80 million pound, whatever it was, and recognise a 72 million pound profit. Now, of course, they are also the beneficiaries of the incredible revenue streams that they're getting from their participation in Europe. However, that said, they still have to make the numbers work, and I would imagine that they will have a problem in the summer unless, and more likely this is going to be the scenario, that suddenly knock on the door. What happens? Newcastle United or Chelsea or City or Saudi Arabia or someone comes along and does exactly what they did last time, where you'll get a young player that is on one person's books moving in one direction, just like what happened between Newcastle and Villa last time. It's an absolute joke, but it is what it is. Now, what does that mean for Tottenham? Well, it means that Daniel Levy is doing a very good job with the sustainability of the football club. But as someone pointed out on Twitter, and I laughed, I thought it was funny, and I thought it's actually accurate. Sustainably mediocre is the reality. Now, again, people always think of me as I'm defending him. I'm not. I'm just pointing out the inaccuracies in the people that have their agendas, and they don't want to talk about the things that don't suit. They want to talk about the finances when they get the chance to, and then as soon as the finances don't look in that direction, then they go, "Why are we all accountants now?" Right? But all I do is just come and say, "Look, for those of you that don't understand these things but are interested in it because it is relevant, maybe I can help you out breaking it down." What I've done today for you guys, I'm going to come to it in a minute because I'm going to pop in and say hello to some people. There's 160 people in the chat. We've been going 15 minutes. Smash the like, guys. Smash the like button. I don't know how many people are here, but there's 160 people here. We should be on. In an ideal world, just get to 100 likes straight out of the back, and everyone just press the like button. It costs you nothing. Really helps the channel out. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Let me go and quickly change the setting on. What was I going to do here? Here we go. Bang, bang, bang. Get that back. In an ideal world, guys, you won't mind if I just stick this on, because I really want to get to 30,000, and for some reason, like the subs go up, subs go down, subs go up, subs go down. I think the shenanigans are still afoot. Double check you're still subscribed. But what I want to show you today, ladies and gentlemen, is, so you know how I said that, I've been saying this for a while, I said that I think that without European football, the budget for the summer would be about £80 million. Now, I had no access to data. I had no access to the resources, not the most recent set, obviously, but I was just putting together a few ideas and crunching the things as I can understand them. And I figured out today, as best I can measure right now, and this is going to be a little bit weird because this year's budgets for the summer obviously are going to be dependent on this year's performance. And there's multiple things that are pulling you away. Like the revenues are going to be lower on some areas. For example, the league position being as poor as it has been, the probable lack of, in all likelihood, the lack of qualification for Europe unless a worldie comes through. But at the same time, you have the additional 15 or 16 non-match day events, which is generating an extra probably £2 million in profit per game, or £2 million in revenue per game. And then obviously the commercial deals that come with that, the sponsorships, the merchandise, the burgers and the teas and the beers and all those things that we have a slice of. Operating costs will go up to factor those things in, because the cost of doing business, people think that it's all profit. If you make £3 million from putting on a show, it's all profit. Of course it isn't. You've got to pay for more police. You've got to pay for the burgers and the beers and the buns and all that stuff. You have to, the cleaning, the depreciation, all those things. But there's lots of things that you're going to look at in next year's revenues that will probably look at better numbers. and it will probably be more in the way of commercial. Commercial number will continue to go up, but in terms of obviously like campaign prize money from the Premier League and from Europe, it'll probably be limited. And so that obviously, when you're doing budgetary transfer budget forecasting, those things are going to come massively into play, right? Like you're going to have to factor in last year's numbers, this year's numbers that we won't be privy to, but the club will, and obviously the likelihood of whatever happens next year. Now, if you get European football, if we do qualify for the Champions League, then obviously those things go out of the water. But what I did, I crunched the numbers today, looking at the last 3 years, looking at the ratios, right? Looking at the 46% ratio, looking at the 42% ratio of the wage to turnover ratio, looking at the agents' fees, as far as I can gather from the information I found, looking at the net spend, looking at the percentage of our revenues in that regard. And lo and behold, I'll show you in a minute, the numbers that we get to are essentially bang on what I predicted without access to any numbers a few weeks ago when I said 80 million quid. So again, you want tomorrow's news today? Spurs Talk Show might be the place to go. Could be wrong on the, obviously they're going to be factoring in things that I'm not aware of, but I was pretty surprised that the data showed what it showed. Before we get into that, guys, let's have a little look-see and say hi to some people. We've got Mud FC in the house. Good to see you, mate. He's saying he's first. Congratulations. F in Hell saying evening all. Good to see you, F in Hell. Juzula. Big up, everyone. Smash that like. Yes, smash it. 180 people here for a Tuesday that happened to be organised 5 minutes before we went live. Love to see it. Rayman, what an intro. Evening, Sean and chat. Yeah, I brought out the intro again. You know why? Because I found my login to an old Invato account where I licensed that music from. And now that I've got the license back, because YouTube are going to demonetize me when they see it, and then I've got to add the license and then I'll be able to get the monetization back. So good, yeah. So you might be seeing more of that. And maybe some other things as well. I might get back into the creative side. Good to see you, Rayman. Good to see you, Tom. Good to see you, DB. Shawnee, apologies for being rude to you last night. Were you rude to me? When were you rude to me? Were you in Savage Show being rude, were you? Oh, mate, honest to God. DB, I'm sure there's a few people in my audience that's a subscriber to his audience and stuff, but generally speaking, like I love Sava to pieces. Absolutely adore that guy. He's a sweetheart of a man. I know him obviously quite well. And again, we always have these tiffs because he's an ego maniac. I'm a bit of an ego maniac. We all like to be right. And but here's the difference, right? I love people that land where they land, and I respect their opinion, even if they don't share mine about life, about football, about Tottenham, about Daniel Levy, about whatever. If you can be logically consistent in your narrative, explain yourself, articulate how you got from A to B, and then say, this is why I'm here, then I have absolutely no problem whether you swing left, swing right, swing whichever way you want on any particular topic, pause. I don't care as long as you're logically consistent and that you don't come across like a hypocrite, or that you say one thing, or you're double talking, or saying one thing out of one side of your mouth and then saying the other 5 seconds later. And Sava is absolutely someone who gets to where he gets to through logically consistent narratives. He doesn't change his opinion because the wind is changing direction, and he explains why he gets where he gets. And I don't always agree with his endpoint, but I absolutely respect his journey. But his endpoint generally is, let's be entirely frank here, his endpoint is generally negative about the football club, right? He generally doesn't, he thinks that the grass is greener everywhere else, and that he, generally speaking, isn't happy with the manager, isn't happy with the players, isn't happy with the club. Okay? And if you're that way inclined, then you're going to harness and harvest and cultivate an audience of people that generally feel the same. I would imagine that most of the people that go onto his audience, that are part of his audience, are also part of the Tottenham away audience, because they also kind of lean in that direction. And it's fine, right? How about it? Do what you want to do. Feel how you want to feel. No problem with it. As long as you get to where you go logically, I've got no issue with what where your endpoint is. But those people are not going to like me. Most people are not going to like me if they have got to the point where the problems at the club are the owner or everything's negative, because I don't lean that way generally. I try to chew over both sides and then land where I land. But I'm also a glass half full person, so I'll try to find the reasons to stay positive. So those people aren't going to like me anyway. And they're definitely not going to like me if I'm in a mood where I'm going to come on and start telling people how it is, especially if the other person is someone that, is part of that general zeitgeist of everything's pretty. I mean, Lubo likes the youth team. He's positive about the youth, but he hates Ange. He hates Levy. you know. And so, yeah, DB didn't even know you were being horrible to me or rude to me last night, but it's water off a duck's back, bro. Water off a duck's back. What do you say anyway? I was a little wine heavy. However, I wish you'd present your perfectly logical arguments with less aggression, more calm and charm. Yeah, well, you know, just cool. Big up, Sean, and all. I don't think I was having a good time last night. I was laughing. That's like Lubo thinks that, you know, that, as I say, the goalposts get moved all the time. Whenever you're having arguments, debates with people that are Levy out, like as soon as you shut down one of their points, then they just move the goalpost somewhere else. And so you spend all day long going, well, that wasn't what you said a minute ago, or I was going to keep correcting you because everything you're saying is not accurate. You know, it's not an ego thing. It's just let's make sure people. I think you have a responsibility. If you're talking in front of hundreds of people, you have a responsibility to not be talking. Like, to be misinforming people, especially if you know that the person who's saying it knows the real deal because you've had those conversations with them. So, like, you know, and then to see like people say, "Oh, you're over talking him." Again, I get accused of over talking people all the time. People over talk me all the time as well. So, again, don't really care. Big up Tot Spurs. Big up Lisa. Big up Eugene. Big up Tom. Big up Lisa. They missed the intro so much. Yeah, cool. It's good, isn't it? Hope your son's okay. He has a game with it's game day. It's game day. I haven't done that for ages. That was an Irish Hotspur thing. I used to do it on Irish Hotspur. How are we paying for the hotel, Sean? Well, that's not yet accounted for in the books. But the point I was going to make was that Tottenham, this is the whole point, right? We need to adapt. We have all of these assets. We have Tavistock. We have the various different properties, we have the golf courses, we have all of these things under the umbrella of ENIC. And so if there is any owner, if there is any anyone with more assets where you could start to push numbers around the plate, like a child who doesn't want to eat his vegetables, and you spend 10 minutes just moving the broccoli over here and trying to convince your mum that you've had enough, like, we can do it. And we have to do it. Because, listen, I get it. I'm an advocate of this notion that the owner of a football club is a custodian of it, a short-term, temporary custodian that should leave the club in a better state than he found it, right? That's the thing. And hopefully root for success along the way. And if they can make a few bob along the way, then fair play. Why else would they get into business in the first place? I totally am okay with all of that. But as I always say, the footballing world is not an insular game. There's 19 other clubs in the Premier League in which are all doing their things. The variables that dictate success or failure influence you depending on what's happening to them and vice versa. So to think that you can be in entire control of the outcomes of your success or failure is silly. It's a logical fallacy when you have 19 other clubs, and the variables that affect you every season are number in their thousands, even as a single club. Some of them are heavier weighted than others. Some of them as a category have so many different kind of tentacles, like injuries. It's not just how many injuries you have, it's how long you have the injuries for. Who do you have them? Who has them? Are there, like, when do they have them? In what games? At what points? Are they happening in the same position at the same time versus, you know, people that are randomly jotted around the pitch? All of those little things add up. And all of those little things are happening to every other club you're competing with as well. Transfer spend, willingness, club appetite, weather, travel, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, you know, how much money you made, how much money you didn't make, whether a player that you thought was going to smash it didn't. You know, all of these things are happening everywhere else as well. And so to think that you can control your destiny in football is stupid. Obviously, you can do is all you can do is put your front foot forward. My point here is that what Chelsea are doing and what Aston Villa have done, they have to obviously expose themselves, and the Premier League are not any closer to fixing any of these. If anything, they're going further back because of what's happened with Manchester City. Manchester City got away with the third part, not got away. That suggests like they broke they sort of side skirted it. They didn't. The rules were just pathetic around, you know, shareholder loans and percentage interest paid on them versus abnormal third-party, related party transactions. The law has been proven to be on their side in that one. So that's part of, but not the only reason why they decided to park all of the intended changes towards anchoring. Excuse me. So what does that mean? It gives more time and more room for more of these clubs with the willingness, the appetite to spend money, the investment risk to be able to get on board these things. So expect more of what you saw between Villa and Chelsea and Newcastle. Expect more of that. Expect more left toe to right toe sales and then loan backs. Expect more of that stuff. And I think that it's not unreasonable for Daniel Levy, as someone that has quote unquote defended him. Like, this is one of the areas where I have been entirely consistent that if you can't beat them, join them. If the beating them is not possible because the powers that be are inept, and as I said a million times, that is the biggest problem in football. It's the system, the lawmakers, the ease of access to pathways around the rules. That is the biggest problem in football. But if that's not any closer to being resolved, despite the intentions of Daniel Levy, who has been the poster boy for all of these things for the last 5 years. Well, unfortunately, Daniel, it's all very well being sustainable. It's all very cool, but sustainable mediocrity is just that. And to me, I don't need you to break the rules. I don't need you. And these people will say, just put your hand in your pocket, right? You can't. This is what Lubo says. He hasn't put his hand in his pocket once. Again, I don't subscribe to the notion, and I don't think anyone who's a business owner, in fact, Lubo is a business owner, so I find this one very odd that he wouldn't do it for himself, but he would expect someone else to do, that if you've been running a business for whatever, to the point where it should be self-sufficient, that an owner should still have to self-fund it to appease fans because a football club is different. It's no different, not to business owners. It's just a business to them. As much as we like this romantic idea where you have this unicorn of an owner who happens to care so much about the fans, whose loyalties to the owners is flimsical and very quick wilting. I think it's just madness. These people don't care. They care about their own ends, and those ends sometimes can coalesce and sometimes can overlap with the fans, but not all the time. Chelsea have got a wonderful way of figuring out these loopholes. But you know what? They might be up for sale again. When it comes to that story in just a second, I just want to spend the first half an hour of this monologue going into that. We've got the Chelsea story for you. We've got the Tyler Dibbling story. We've got £100 million. I do want to show you this number, how we get to this numbers, because I do believe that Tottenham have got £80 million wiggle room, which is what I said. £80 million, or it's actually £79 million. So I was off by $1 million. I believe they've got £79 million wiggle room based on last year's numbers before they get to this year's 70% threshold, which is obviously inaccurate data in as much as their threshold for next year's UEFA rules, if we were to qualify for Europe and be held to that account, would be dependent on this year's numbers, which we don't have access to, obviously, because they haven't finished yet. So the numbers are wrong in as much as it's old data being reflecting on current situations, but for what we have access to, it's the best I can do. And that's where I got my £80 million from. And I'll show you the numbers in a minute so that you can verify it with me. We do have Stefan Borson to look at. So we've got the Tyler Dibbling story to Man City, £100 million transfer claim, apparently. And we've got this story about Chelsea might have to agree a takeover because Blueco, which is spearheaded by Todd Bowley and Egbali, who purchased the club from Abramovich for $4.25 billion. Well, there's a bit of a fallout between the two. Begdad Egbali and Todd Bowley cannot agree on the club's plans for the future. I'm not sure of the detail of what that looks like in terms of, is it because of, are we going to continue to just push numbers around a plate, or how are we actually going to ever get a return on investment? Because let's be honest, these guys are in it for the ROI. They are. And all of the spending that they're having to do, they're not winning anything, are they? They spent all this money, and yeah, okay, they might win the Conference League this year, but they put on a good chance. But I don't think they're going to qualify for the Champions League right now. And if they don't qualify for the Champions League this year, that will be, their third year outside of the Champions League, having spent God knows how much, 1.5 billion or something. It's madness. And like I say, they would be in breach of FFP and PSR for the last 3 years running had it not been for these abilities to push money around the paper. What I'm asking Daniel Levy to do, and this is obviously in his wording, right? This is his when he says the club has to be sustainable, what he's saying, he's not saying I'm going to put my hand in my pocket. I think he's also saying, I'm not going to sell my left toe to my right toe and loan it back, because that essentially means that you can spend more money, but the money still has to be spent from somewhere, right? The money is in the club still has to, that money has to be manifested from somewhere, even though you're just knocking numbers around a piece of paper, just like Todd Bowley and other clubs are doing. They've got the cash in their account because of the $1.5 billion that was written off by the Roman Abramovich fund, and they had that money. They put that money into the club for the projects around the stadium regeneration, all those things. So it's one thing to push numbers around on a plate, but eventually, if you want to take that 200 million quid and then go and buy a player with it, at some point that money has to leave your account and go to the buyers, and so, or go to the selling club's accounts. And so, is Daniel Levy going to do it? I don't think he will, but if I'm entirely honest, I think he has to adapt. I think he has to, or get out of the way, because, I think that the FFP and the PSR was the last runway, the last wiggle room where the gap would naturally close like this, where you'd hope that a team that was doing the right things organically with Tottenham, and you're going after the young players, and hopefully you can build something. And we were knocking on the door for so long. And then he was the champion. He was the poster boy for this PSR and FFP thing that was supposed to pull these guys back. But in reality, it hasn't, has it? But not because the PSR and the FFP wasn't the right thing to do, but it's because of the smartest minds in the room focusing on wiggle room and loopholes. I'll show you those numbers in a minute, those stories in a second, guys. Let's get into who else we've got here. Good evening, says Daz. Good to see you, mate. Big up to all. Blimey, that intro is long. Yeah, it is, yeah. I've got a super chat here. Phil Coys, pick up Phil Coys. Best outcome would be if Ange delivers to Europa League and resigns. It's best for both parties. Ange's way of playing is not sustainable over 38 games. Did everyone see that on, I don't know, you might have seen it if you were watching the stream yesterday. The live stream with Johnny and I did like an hour and 15. In the end, we saved 15 minutes at the end to do the debate about Ange Postecoglou. I chopped it up and put it up as a second video because I thought it was quite interesting. It was the first time that Johnny and I have allowed each other to have like 5 minutes of uninterrupted pitching. And I think that I personally think that, I don't think Ange is good enough. I don't. But like I say, I think if you don't run to a meritocracy-based world, then what are we doing? Right? Life shouldn't be a popularity contest. It shouldn't be. You should be rewarded for doing things that was in your remit, was in your expectation, your targets, and your goals for the year. And I think, like at the start of the season, Tottenham fans, I think, would have 1,000,000% said, if we lift the Europa League this year, successful season for the first time in many. But it's amazing how people change their story, right? Like this is another thing. I guess it's just something that you have to shake hands with human nature. That everyone is like, what have you done for me lately? But again, there's just so much of this. There's so much goalpost moving. Like I said before, the people that said top four is not a trophy. And big up to you. Shout out to you, Phil. Appreciate your loyalty, mate. When we were knocking on the door and getting top four all those years, that wasn't good enough. Suddenly, getting a trophy isn't good enough. In fact, like I say, many people were championing the idea of relegation because they care more about Daniel Levy leaving, when the whole premise of why they hate Daniel Levy is because of the lack, or for the most part, I know some people think it's more about we don't even have, we don't care about the football club or whatever. All these kind of like meaningless statements of apparently fact that are actually just opinion, but that are not substantiated. They're just things that people say, like lack of ambition. What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Tell me what that actually means so that I can hold you to account. I can record you. I can make a note of what you're saying on April the 1st, 2025, of what you want from the next owner, so that if you get it and it still doesn't bring you success, then you can't move your goalpost. But no one wants to do that anymore. No one wants to have their archives sort of ransacked and look for receipts, because they want the ability to just always be right, always pitch whatever wind direction is of travel is where we're at. Then they want to pitch their sail in that direction. And I just want to say, well, hang on a second. I'm just holding people to account for the kind of logical inconsistencies. If Daniel Levy's the problem for lack of trophies, then why is winning a trophy a bad thing? It's a bad thing for your movement, but your movement shouldn't be a movement if you get the trophies that you want. You should be happy, but now you're not happy, and the prospect of winning trophies is a bad thing. The idea that top four wasn't a trophy, so we wanted some more silverware. Now you're on the idea of getting a Europa League. Well, that's not good enough for the owner. It's not good enough for the manager either. Yeah, that Ange Postecoglou might be out of his depth. He may well be out of his depth. I do think that, as I said 1,000 times, if every tool that you have, the only tool that you have is a hammer, every problem has to be a nail. And I think that he has been a little bit undone. There's an interesting video out from him today where he did take some accountability for the lack of awareness of the additional 2 games in the Europa League and how much that was going to play its part and take its toll. And he obviously went into the season, there was no break, and he was somewhat blaming the schedule, but the schedule hasn't really affected other teams. To me, he's just a master of spin. You know, Shane Warne would be proud of some of the stuff that comes out. He loves to take the responsibility. Don't blame my players, blame me. And then when people blame him, he gets upset about it. So I don't care about that, but you obviously do care about it. You know, it's a lot of salesman spiel. You know, as I say, in my lifetime, in my career, I've had a lot of people that I've been under my remit that talk a fantastic game. You know, sorry, boss, this time it's different. Next time I'll be there on time. Next time I'll get the sale. I won't do it again. You know, all the things that you want to hear, but talk is cheap. And I do think that that's a large part of Ange Postecoglou's power play, is his silver tongue. Put all that to one side, though. You got to a semi-final of the Cup and you beat Liverpool in the first leg, and we weren't strong enough in the second leg against the best team in European football. Over 2 legs. Would Newcastle have beat Liverpool over 2 legs? I'm not so sure. I don't think so. 1 leg, up for it, momentum. Let's not take anything away from Newcastle, because they were fantastic and they very much deserved it. And look, we might have another new winner in the FA Cup, right? You've got 3 teams in that 4 that haven't won a cup for ages. So, be interesting, right? Be interesting. And I want to see it. Nuno Espirito Santo today was saying the gap is closing, right? It's like the kind of the top 6 or whatever, it's going to pivot. We'll wait and see about that, because I've been saying this forever, and it was interesting to see Stefan Borson and Simon Jordan both saying the same thing today, tomorrow's news today, that I think that you will see that the teams that do very well, in fact, Ange Postecoglou was saying it as well, right? That the teams that play in Europe one season generally struggle in the league, and then they come out of Europe and they do better next season. You might see, I mean, I very much doubt a scenario whereby Tottenham keep hold of Ange Postecoglou in a world where we're not playing in Europe, i.e. if we get beaten by Frankfurt or Lazio or Bilbao, whoever. I'd be amazed if he's still at the club. But if he is still at the club, if Daniel Levy decides to stick by his guy, then I think you could easily see a team where Tottenham perform materially better next season in the league, because you don't have those extra 8 games, you know? And I think it is a big deal. First, I think the schedule is it's a reasonable argument, but that's just the way it plays. It's the way it is. Like, if you want to be the best, you have to play twice a week. And for Ange to say we weren't prepared for it, and also to say, like, you know, the injuries were, you know, I mean, they did happen early. Like, I'm not going to sit here and there's absolute merit to what he says. I just think he also forgets the fact that in the early stages of the European competition, he did pivot his squad. He did rotate. You know, the cup run obviously was maybe an additional shock. But if you're sitting there expecting to be knocked out, then I mean, I don't know what sort of mind. Like, oh, it's a surprise. We didn't expect to be playing, you know, deep in the cup and also Europa League, and also the players didn't get a break very much from the summer. Okay. At what point did you realise that? Are you just realising that now? So we've still got that high momentum training, the intensity training. If that's the case, then again, that's a little bit, you're opening yourself up to criticism. I respect the honesty, but I think it's just a bit of a wordplay. But with honesty comes, okay, well then you're a Premier League manager, bro, who doesn't come with his own coaching staff. You know, what does that say about Ryan Mason? I'm not even just going to throw that at Ange Postecoglou. Ryan Mason's been around the Premier League long enough. Like, Can you imagine Ryan Mason having a disagreement with Ange Postecoglou? Can you imagine him standing up? I look at Ryan Mason and think he would probably be a yes man, whatever the boss wants. Yes, boss. And I think that good working relationships need combative and strong personalities where you can have a meeting of minds and say, well, actually, I think this is a problem here. We need to do something different. Explain to me why not. You know, I respect people that would challenge ideas. Doesn't mean you always get their, but they always get their way. But I can't imagine that that's happening really with Ryan Mason or his mate who's got the nepotism, nepotism role. Where did we get to? 700 million. Oh, creative accounting for Chelsea, says Husen. Who else we got here? Levy's not interested in the balance sheet. He looks at the profit and loss probably hourly. Yeah, probably, possibly. I wonder if he's got that. I wonder if he's got like a system that's like whenever the cash register for a beer or a shirt sale, just ting, and he gets like when you used to play Sim City back in the day, and your money would go up and down by the second. Where do we get to? Chelsea lost £200 million last year. They just fiddled the figures by selling assets to themselves. Exactly, mate. Exactly, mate. Yeah, 100%. What we got to? Marina Granovskaya. That's her name. Yeah, Granovskaya. 100%. Yeah. She was cute as well. Look at you boys all coming in with the answers. That was a while ago, and it was 40 minutes ago. Didn't we catch up? Fabio Paratici is not coming. Yeah, we've seen that today as well. Italian media saying 99% certain that he's going to Milan. Have a bit of a kick, isn't it? Although, to be entirely honest, like, I don't know if I was that impressed with Paratici. Like, I mean, Johnny obviously makes a very impassioned pitch, right? But I challenged Johnny on this the other day. Like, tell me what it was who was it that we missed out on by not having these things in place? And he said it wasn't that, it was more around getting rid of the deadwood within the youth system. Okay. So that didn't really line up to this idea of paying players more, did it? And so I don't know who we missed out on by not having paying players or people that were part of the squad that moved on, apart from the likes of Cherky or whatever his name is and the fella Madueke. Really, like, did Tottenham really have monsters in our system that then left and went elsewhere and that they would have stayed had it not been for a payment program? I don't remember hearing about. I could be wrong. I haven't paid that much attention over the years to our youth system. It's only recently it's become a thing in my zeitgeist, but I don't know. And then when it comes to like the players that you brought in, yeah, for sure. Like most of our first team is Paratici's effort, but you'd expect that, right? You'd expect that because Lang has only been here 1 year. So like, I don't know. I mean, like, I'd make the argument that the best signing that we've made in the last few years is probably Lucas Bergvall. I think he will become, I said it from the very first time I saw him, this guy's got it. And the same with Archie Gray. Pay a lot of money for these young players. We certainly did. But I don't like, if Paratici wants to go back, so be it. I know things might have been a little bit more continuity, everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet, and maybe Lang has not really identified too many players that we haven't heard of, apart from Kinski and Paratici's Vicario. I don't know. I don't really know if it's like that much of a difference. Let me know. I know we've done this 1-0 game in the past. We'll play it again. Like, is Paratici going to Milan a big kick in the teeth for you? Is it a huge kick in the teeth? Is it like, oh no, that's really bad news? If so, hit the 1. If it's a 0 and you're kind of like, we'll give Lang another year, see what he can do, and hopefully we can buy a player or two that will manifestly change. Let me know. 0 for that, 1 for no. Paratici going to Milan is a big deal. DB saying Levy's not interested in the balance sheet. 700 million works out at 58 million a window. That's since 2019, bro. Are you thinking that's where did you get 58 million from? You think that's over 12 years or something? Not sure what your numbers is on there, Astra, but good to see. Evening, everyone. Shawnee, I sent you a text earlier. I hope you got it. I didn't, mate. Did I? Let's have a look. I'm not sure you got my number, mate. I was about to say it out loud. If you have got my number, but actually my phone with that number in is not on, so I will have it. I'm just doing a little shenanigan. So I'll check it. I'll check it out, Benny boy. Good to see you, mate. Hello, Shawnee. Keep an eye behind your brother. I'll keep an eye behind you. Oh. Yeah, those ghosts, man, they're coming out for me. Ben Salah, big up. Bro is on the Katies every day. Evening, Shawnee. Good to see you, Mark. I was only watching as you were on it. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, yes. Well, okay. There you go. I mean, like, so I don't imagine that many people of my regular audience are probably regular. Like you see, I go whenever I dial into Savage Show. Like the amount of names that I'm familiar with, but only through that channel, is crazy. I genuinely think there's probably I reckon there's probably 3,000 regular Tottenham fans that dial into YouTube, and I reckon 300-400 of them probably frequent Spurs Talk Show. 300-400 someone like Tottenham away, 300-400 Irish Hotspur. They all kind of dance around. There's a few people that will overlap and watch all, but some people very much stick to their camps, and that's cool though, isn't it? Right? It's cool. It's cool to have a little slice. I just want a little slice of the pie. I'm not looking for all of them. You can say talking bollock, Sean. We won't get upset. Yeah. Hello, Nick. Good to see you, mate. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're okay, buddy. Yeah. I've got no problem with Luba or any of them. I like. Generally speaking, I like 95% of the people that I've come across in the Tottenham community. But I'm not going to sit here and say it's night at noon because someone else wants to push a narrative that. I mean, he might be right about the idea that Daniel Levy is a problem. That's a subjective take. But when he says things like it's a fact that Daniel Levy doesn't care about this club, I mean, I don't know what we're doing here. Do we have to go back to school to figure out the difference between fact and fiction? 100% my biggest gripe with the YouTube scene is a lot of people are extremely vocal about their views with no logic or fact and just feelings, but portraying them as fact to hundreds of people. Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's honestly, mate. That's really why I get a lot of scuffles with people. Is sometimes because I've had a few to drink. Other times I'm enjoying it. I have fun, and I know I can overtalk people and stuff, and that's a really bad thing, and I shouldn't do it. It comes across as conceited that you're only interested in your own voice. But I always feel in the moment like it's a two-edged thing, like it's a double-edged sword. Like it's coming. If you're talking at the same time as someone else, they are talking at the same time as you, right? So why is it that guy's over talking? No, well, actually, I don't know, both people. I suppose it depends on who was talking first, maybe. But also, if you've been talking first and you're still talking after 8 minutes, then at some point, if I don't interject here, then this guy's gonna, it'll be tomorrow morning soon. Anyway, what about Enicomics? Oh, that's a better one. Better than Levy on it. Yeah, Enicomics. Well done, like that. What are you talking about? Jeez, don't know. What are you talking about? Catch up, mate. We're 25 minutes behind. I don't know what you're talking about. Good evening, Sean. Chat. Expanding the state with a hotel has lots of useful social functions for the local club and business people. One in my local club has facilities for parties, funerals, restaurants, bistro. Yeah. Yeah. There are very few Jack Walkers out there. Blackburn guy, right? Bro, PSG owners spend out of their pocket and reek in insane profits even more than us. Well, they get more revenue. I'm not sure they make profit. I haven't actually looked at PSG's numbers, but they get a lot of revenue for sure. I think they're the number 2, or they were the number 1. But revenue and profit are not the same thing. Levy is such a stickler for the rules, but he works for Joe Lewis, yin and yang, 100%. Levy and Nick have made an absolute killing, financed by ticket buying, subscription paying, merch, punching, facts, not a feeling. Enoch haven't actually made a penny for what it's worth. They've never taken a dividend. Daniel Levy's taken a healthy salary, but as I've said 1,000 times, he could get far more in compensation had he not being a football owner and done the stock market listed thing and been on the FTSE 100, working as a CEO for another company of the same size, he would get paid far more and like double. He can justify his earnings by saying, you know, this company is worth X amount. You compare that to every other business on the FTSE 100. So look, it is what it is, mate. It is what it is. And again, like I think that people, like, anything will do, any stick. The end of the day, the guy, like, when you buy a ticket, I even like, and I love Ricky Sachs, right? But I remember when I went to last word on Spurs, and I had that big debate with those other three guys around ENIC back in January, I think it was, and Ricky was saying, like, Sean, I was promised this stadium was going to be a game changer, and I was like, it has been a game changer in terms of what game changer meant, like in terms of the ability to raise revenues to at least have a crack at competing. And then the goalposts were moved to, it's not about raising money, spending money, it's about how you spend it. I was like, okay, but the stadium isn't responsible for that. If you've got some magical stadium that not only does it, able to hold 62,000 people, but on the side gig, it's also a top class scout, a negotiator, and also, able to convince Beyonce to come, all these things. Like, you're holding a lot of the responsibility to the stadium. The stadium's job is to generate money. It's people's jobs to know how to spend it. And again, I'm not to repeat myself, but if this comes down to like this kind of the buck stops at the top thing, cool, that's a fine. I think it's a lazy argument personally. I never do that. I don't like the idea of the buck stops at the top because it basically absolves and abdicates the responsibility of everybody else below the chief executive for doing their job. I prefer to go, well, let's silo this stuff and allocate and identify who's responsible for what and how good they are at doing their job. And I think that Daniel Levy has hired people and maybe kept them employed too long, didn't convince the right people to stay. He's got a lot of problems. He's made a lot of mistakes with regards to his inability to step away from the negotiations and trust people to get it done, or he's hired people that are incapable of getting it done. All those things are fair, but to sit there and say that, everything that's bad about the club is his fault, but everything that's been good about the club, which also has to land at his feet in a world where you're doing the buck stops at the top thing, or that's just luck. The Champions League run was just luck. Lucas Bergwijn was luck. Gareth Bale was luck. Harry Kane was luck. No, that's not how it works, mate. You don't get to choose how the accountability gets run because your agenda wants everyone to think, you want everyone to think that Daniel Levy is the worst thing ever. If you're doing the buck stops at the top thing, then all that's been good is also at his feet. And those things are quite meaningful. Like the top two league finishes in the history of our club outside of the 61 season. Champions League final. How many other owners of football clubs can claim that? Not many. Certainly not ones that also do it organically. So, again, all that said, I'm more than happy for the Qataris or whoever else to come in, as long as I can see what that looks like and as long as I can get a picture, a feel for what they can do that's different, then I'm all on board it. And maybe the catalyst for me to move in that direction where I'm a little bit more like, okay, you've taken us as far as you can, is the reality that his lack of willingness to embrace the adaptation that's necessary to throw a little bit more caution by doing the sneaky stuff, the Chelsea-omics or whatever you're going to call it. By doing that stuff, pushing numbers around on a plate, that's easy, right? He could do that if he wanted to. The problem is that at some point, the rubber has to meet the road, and that money that you're fictitiously creating on the accounts that he would easily be able to do, it still has to come from somewhere to leave Tottenham's books to go to the pockets and the accounts of the clubs, of the players that you want to buy with that money. And so it's easy to push the numbers around on a plate, but the money has to still come from somewhere. And he isn't willing to do that, or Joe Lewis isn't willing to do that. And so on that basis, whilst I can subscribe to sustainability, and I don't think that it's incumbent and necessary for an owner to have to like prop up a football club, the cold light of day is that other clubs are doing it. And so unless you unless you get on board that movement, then other teams will, right? Arsenal, I would imagine this summer will do something similar. I think you saw today, Arteta's come out and said they're expecting a big summer, And Tottenham might get left behind because Nuno Santo is right in that there's new forces emerging. Like Aston Villa are a genuine threat, but they are still. It's gonna be fascinating to watch how they figure out their 70% threshold thing. And obviously Newcastle aren't going anywhere. Nottingham Forest, I think, are going to be a flash in the pan, even though I really respect their owner. I think he's a brilliant owner. I'll be interested to see whether or not. I don't think they will, right? But there's certainly more. The gap between the likes of sort of second or maybe third and what used to be the six, it's now kind of like, I'd imagine it's sort of City, Arsenal, and Liverpool that are slightly ahead. And then after that, it used to be 3 teams, 4 teams max that was in that second pocket. Now I'd say it's like maybe 7 or 8. And so that's cool, that's good. But Tottenham are going to be a victim of that unless one of 3 things has to happen, 2 or 3 things has to happen. Either way, wherever the money comes from, whether you do it through selling players or you do it through finding accounting techniques or you do it through Champions League qualification in the rare circumstances, at the end of the day, you still need to purchase you still need to identify talent better and get the right players in. And this notion that, Tottenham will never get the right players in because you won't pay the wages. You look at Manchester United, who do pay the wages, and they still sign dog shit players. So just paying the wages is not the solve. It's part of the issue where you at least can access the conversation potentially of certain players that are otherwise deemed outside of our wheelhouse. But there's a lot of players that get and want and will probably command more than Tottenham have traditionally paid to players who don't help you. Casemiro, right? Even the player Ugarte hasn't been great. Marcus Rashford, took him to get out of it. It's amazing with Marcus Rashford, isn't it? It was so obvious that he was going to go to Villa and just start. Suddenly everything was going to be a breath of fresh air for him. Anyway, let's get back to the comments. And I do want to go through these. I'm talking for an hour. I've got to do these. Let's show you this thing. Drew's saying, "Hey Spurs, hey Shawnee, you see Gomez just signed a new 5-year deal with Wolves? Yeah, I did see that. Yeah. That one's off. I'm seeing a lot more noise about this Johnny Cardoso as well. I was speaking to the lady from Al Jazeera, and she was saying that what she's hearing from her, not that I'm not saying this is like an ITK thing. She was just telling me that the Johnny Cardoso thing looks like it's probably more likely than not. So that maybe that's the guy we're going to end up with, which I'm not particularly impressed if that's the case. Appreciate that you don't participate in groupthink and have your own view, says Matt. Good to see you, mate. I think Levy's intention is to compete in an organic way, but he's made so many poor decisions and can't match ambition. That's what, listen, I don't disagree with that, Matt. I'm like I say, I'm increasingly aware of the reality. The stark reality is that the inability for these rules to be kind of sorted out. I mean, most of the other chairmen have a better risk appetite for football. It's one thing I've always said from day one of my channel. Daniel Levy's risk appetite is incorrect for football. It's not correct. And he was hoping that his business acumen and then putting the pressure on for the FFP thing was going to be the difference maker. But it hasn't really worked out, has it? It hasn't really had the teeth that it was supposed to. And I think the other chairmen, generally speaking, have got more money themselves directly. Like Joe Lewis clearly isn't interested in Tottenham and doesn't want it. And Daniel Levy is not independently wealthy. So even if he wanted to, he still needs to get the approval from Daddy, from somewhere. And it's not going to come from Joe Lewis. It's not going to come from the lawyers of the trust or whatever. So that's why we're looking elsewhere. But will Daniel Levy... Here's the question for you. In fact, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Sorry for everyone I was coming to your comments, but I just want to jump ahead. I want to ask you this, ones and zeros, right? Will Daniel Levy, even if the Qataris come in and they put in 500 million and that money, goes in the other direction, wherever it has to go to do the things that it needs to do with the hotels. Because obviously you can't just take the 500 million and just stick it on the books and then spend it. That's not how investment works. Again, that's the rules. Again, this is one of the things that I like to make sure I need to tell people. That's not how it works. Right? You can't do that. But obviously you can start to push numbers around a plate if you have an owner that's willing to do those sorts of things. So you can find a way to make that new investment work, even though you can't technically just take 500 million pounds from the Qataris and then put it in the bank account and then go and buy whoever you want. That's not how it works, right? Other people think that is how it works. It isn't. But here's a question for you. Daniel Levy, if he had the shackles taken off, he had someone else coming in that was paying and playing the game with a bit more risk on, and he was allowed to stay at Tottenham, picking up his 5 million a year, 3 million a year, would Daniel Levy's inability to see negotiations as anything other than a zero-sum game, would that still be a roadblock for Tottenham signing the best players or the players that we want to? Even if the Qataris came in and said, "Look, we need some better players. Right? We want to be the best." In a world where Daniel Levy was still the chairman, but obviously the ownership was starting to be moved away, and he was now working with someone else's money, would his just general demeanor around, "No, I am not going to pay a fucking footballer more than me. I'm not going to do it. I just refused. They kick footballs. I am not paying Jack Grealish 250 grand a week. I am not doing it." Would that still be a thing, even if it wasn't his money anymore that was paying the bill, that was picking up the tab? Or do you think he'd sit there and go, "Okay, now the pressure's off me to find the money. Now we can start to go after it"? Or do you just do you think that we'll see even under a new owner that still had Levy? Do you think we could see that next level, or do you think he'll just always be the guy that's looking to nickel and dime? Because I worry a little bit about that. I do. And I don't know the answer, to be honest. Newcastle won a trophy with FFP. They couldn't use all their oil money like Roman style. Sean can't explain this. Can't explain what? That they got to the semi-final and played Arsenal. We got to the semi-final and played Liverpool, and they just went one better in the final. I don't know what this sort of Sean can't explain. It's not like I'm not attached to this idea that no one else ever wins anything. I said 92% of all trophies that have been won by any team has been won by 5 in the last 25 years. That's not an opinion, Anna. That's a fact. That's just a fact, mate. And then in the last month, one additional team has joined the other 8%. I saw someone last night saying this 92% thing. What? So why are Tottenham put in the same bucket of the other 1,000 football clubs, or 100 football clubs? Why are we compared to Doncaster? Who said that? Whoever said that? Tottenham are one of the other 7 teams that have won 1 or 2 trophies. So 92% have gone 5 ways, and until last month, 8%, the other 8% went to 7 teams, 6 of whom won 1 trophy, Tottenham being one of them, and Leicester being the only team that's won 2. And the other 5 teams of the 6, so Tottenham, and then you've got like Middlesbrough and Portsmouth, etc. Over the last 25 years, right? They all won 1 trophy. And I've done this research before. I showed you the pathway, how they got to the final and who they beat. None of them had a difficult time. None of them had anything like the pathway to the final that Tottenham would have had for the Carabao Cup. But that's not comparing Tottenham to Doncaster Rovers. That's saying 92% goes 5 ways, fact. The other 8% goes 7 ways, fact. It's not an opinion. And it's not even trying to say anything. It's just saying this notion that Tottenham should be as successful as they used to be. There's loads of other teams that used to win almost as much as Tottenham, and they don't anymore. Why? Why? Here's where the opinion comes in. My answer to why is because if it was just Tottenham, then I'd say it might be a Tottenham problem. But the fact that it's an Aston Villa problem, it's a Newcastle problem. And by the way, just because Newcastle have won recently, that just makes them level with Tottenham in the last 25 years. 65 years they had to wait, right? Nottingham Forest, Derby, West Brom, Wolves, West Ham, Leeds. There's never-ending list of teams that used to be successful over the last 75 years. I've got the data. In fact, I'll show it to you right now so you know that I'm not someone that just makes things up, and I'm not someone that portrays fact as fiction or opinion. Do I have it? Do I have it? Yes, I do have it. Here you go. League titles. Let me get rid of that. Where's Burnley? Where's Ipswich? Where's Blackburn? Forest, Villa, Leicester, Derby, Leeds, Wolves, Everton. Where are their trophies? The league titles since 1951. Where are them? Do they all have Daniel Levy? Do they all have Daniel Levy in charge? No, they don't. What about these ones, right? And look at the trend. You can see it on the screen. 1951 to 1975. Look at the amount of teams that were winning trophies in that period. Look at them. That's domestic trophies, by the way. Stoke, Swindon, QPR, Birmingham, Leicester, Norwich, Sunderland, Bolton, Blackpool, Burnley, Ipswich, Forest, West Ham, West Brom, Everton, Villa, Newcastle, Leeds, Wolves, and Tottenham, and then the other five, the big five. And then look what happened in the next 25 years. A lot fewer teams. And then look what happened in the most recent 25 years. A lot fewer teams. A lot fewer teams. The trend is evident that fewer and fewer teams win the trophies. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. Okay? It's a fact. I don't know why people have such a problem with facts being pointed out. Is it just because it just upsets your narrative? Like you want it to be Daniel Levy's fault because that's what you've been told, and you want a boogeyman in your club that you can hate. And because you can't access him, you want to access someone that somehow defends him. I'm more accessible to you, so you want to hate me? Okay, have at it. Don't bother me. But it's weird. It's super weird. What's Spurs King saying? But out of that 92%, we've only been knocked out by 50% of the 92. But hang on, this is weird. Maths. This is math. But out of that 92%, we've only been knocked out by 50 of the 92. So 46%. What? Mate, you're gonna have to break that one down for me, buddy. I'm not drunk enough yet for that one. Are you saying that we've only lost in cups to Manchester United and Chelsea and Liverpool? We haven't lost to Arsenal. Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure. Not sure what you're saying. I don't know. I also heard someone else saying last night, it's okay for Sean to feel the way he does, but why are we all accountants now? Why don't we care about success or something? And then someone else said, I think it's because he hasn't got any experience at winning, or like he hasn't felt of winning, which I don't think I think it was a genuine comment. I think the guy who said it seems like a lovely guy, seems like a nice guy. I've got no issue with him. But I think what he means is like he must think I'm young enough to not know what winning feels like, and therefore I don't care or something. But I was at the 99 final at Wembley against Leicester. I remember that, dancing on the seats. We were row like 8. We would dance. The seats didn't have any backs to them, so everyone was on their chairs. I was at Blackburn for the 2-1 loss at Cardiff. I was at Wembley for Chelsea. I didn't get to Madrid for the Champions League. I was at Wembley for the United game in 2012, lost on penalties. Every final we've been to in England, I've been to. So I'm very aware of the pain of losing, and I'm very aware of the joy of winning. Very much. I go to as many games I possibly can. I don't have enough points to go to all the away games, but I've got people that are generous enough to offer me tickets. And when I can go, I do go. Travel to up and down the country, more so than most. Had a season ticket since I was 8 years old. I only gave it up when I moved to America and Australia, 2013, and I got it back again in 2018. Oh, sorry. I got it back again in 2022, 2 years after I got back in 2020, so 2 years after that. I think that's right. I've had a season ticket the last 2 years. Yeah, man, that final was amazing. How old were you, Archer, when that happened? I was like, what year? It was 1999, so I was probably 15. Was it 15? I feel like I was younger, but it must have been. If it was 1999, Leicester, Alan Nielsen, the header in injury time. What a time to score. What a time to score. You know, the only sad part about that, am I not wrong in thinking that was the one that Sol Campbell lifted the trophy, right? Am I right about that? Sol Campbell lifted that trophy? I was at the final against Man City. You know, the one that, yeah. I was there for that one as well. I was there for that. I had to pay a lot of money for that ticket, though. Eden Sean, did you take a look at Nick Voltemade? The player, I haven't, mate. No, I haven't. Does he play for Stuttgart, Dan? I know you messaged me about that one. I haven't had a look. I can't get into my Y-Scout account today. I don't know why. Can you genuinely not see why people hate Daniel? Yeah, of course I can. Again, I don't. People don't listen to me. Clearly, I'm not here to tell anyone how to feel. I get it. I feel the same way on so many levels. But like when people say shit that isn't true, then like I feel like there's a responsibility. If you know better, if you know what the facts are in an account, and people say shit that isn't true or pretend like things can happen that can't, I don't go on and tell people they're wrong about how to feel. I just say you're wrong about how you're putting the argument out there, and you're influencing people. That's all. I don't care how you feel. Like, you must know, Slappy Jack, everyone that comes on my channel is a Levy out person. Everyone. Irish Hotspurs Levy out. Johnny's Levy out. I've got, Jim from Oso Spurs, he's not a Levy out. All of the guys, I've had Lubo on my channel loads of times. Everyone in every single person that's been on my channel, the majority of people are Levy out. And that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with people that Levy out. No issue at all. First and foremost, I think it's good content to have a debate. Second of all, I get riled up when people say you're not a fan. You're not a fan, Sean, because your career interests lean into certain parts of the football conversation and you want to talk about it because I'm interested in that and other people aren't, although they pretend to be when it suits them. They roll out their stuff. They want to go through the numbers. And then as soon as you point out where they're going wrong, hey, we're a football club, Sean. We're not accounting. Okay, well, why are you talking about it then? Why are you talking about it? And then as soon as I correct you, suddenly we're not an accountant. You pretend like you are. But then to say you're not a fan, Sean, you're not a fan of our football club. But by the way, I was rooting for us to be relegated. And he's proud of that fact, by the way. He's backed it up. Backed it up on Twitter today. He's backed it up on the stream offline after the show yesterday. I'm like, who's the fake fan here? I am, because I happen to understand finance and it's quite relevant. And I'm talking about it, and you're calling me a fake fan, but you're the guy who's championing our trophy failure when the only reason you hate Daniel Levy in the first place is because we don't win enough trophies. And when we get in a position to win it, you'd rather we lose it so that you can get the guy out. Like, what's going on up here? What is going on? It's madness. And then to also sit there and say, I want relegation because if it got Daniel Levy out, I'd be okay with it. If you think that Daniel Levy would sell the club at like a 70% devaluation because of the 1 year, the microcosm moment of being down in the championship, when you know that Tottenham would come straight back up again, then you're mad. So you're rooting for something that won't even eventuate with what you want, but will just harm Tottenham, harm Tottenham's fans, harm Tottenham's people that want to, see us play the best teams every year. Yet you're rooting for that, and you say I'm not a fan. Your agenda's got you all whacked up, bro. Your agenda's got you all whacked up. I watched the 99 final in Glen Parva. What the fuck is Glen Parva? Is that a place? It felt good winning it as it stopped Man United winning the quad. Is that right? Wasn't the Man United triple the 99-2000 season? Do you know what? You could be right about that. Probably are. Collusive right foot. Collusive. There you go, mate. I just watched that debate. You and Lubo made me laugh. Yeah, I haven't watched it back. I don't care. Probably came across like a bozo. I usually do. But everything I said was fact. So anyway, this is what I wanted to show you guys. This is what I wanted to show you. This is the thing. I've been waiting an hour and 15 minutes to get to it. Here's the bad boy, right? Let me get good to see you. Kulu's elusive right foot. Nice to message me on Twitter. By the way, guys, like I say, if anyone of you wants to ever come on this show or do anything, come on the conspiracy shows or whatever, Twitter's where you can find me. So this is what I did, right? Simple rudimentary maths. So you can look at the 3 years. I just did this as a comparison piece. 70% of the revenue. This is just for the UEFA FF piece. This doesn't matter for Premier League stuff, and it won't matter obviously if Tottenham were not to get into the Champions League next year. But so the revenue's there, 444 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, 550 2 years ago, 528 last year. 70% of that, which is the threshold of what you can spend on the combination of wages, transfer spend, and agents' fees, is 370 million. This year, 222 million pound on wages, so 42% of that money, right? Sorry, the numbers got a bit out of whack there. Net transfer spend. What I found really weird was when I looked at the actual account. Let me see if I can get this up for you. Pause. So if you go a little bit deep, can I share the screen? Hold up. And again, I really haven't had enough time to chew through all this, but here we go. Share that. Bring it up on stage. Get rid of that for a minute. Okay. So this is the if you shoot forward all the way through here, I've read all this shit today. Didn't get to the bottom of it, but here we go. Where is it? Here we go. Football trading. So 135 million pound we spent in that particular year. And we obviously received 82 million pound back. I'm guessing that's largely for the Harry Kane money. Which leaves us with 53 million pound net spend over that 12-month period. Similarly for the year before, spent 127 million, received 15 million pound back, 111 million. That's just the football operations side, right? Not including anything else. So I just want to sort of verify where I got the data from. Now, again, there could be bits and pieces in it because I haven't had a chance to really go through it in a fine-tooth comb. And of course, this data doesn't look at amortization. I'm just keeping it simple because to go through the specifics of the amortization, you're going to have to know exactly what players were signed when, how much for, and also how much of those fees were paid up front. It's not always a case of if you sign a player for 100 million on a 5-year deal that you pay the club 20 million a season, right? Sometimes you might pay 30 million up front, 10 million the next, and 20 million 2020, whatever. All those things are nuanced and specific, and you won't know until you know. And I haven't got the time to go through it, nor does it necessarily even articulate all that stuff in the detail. It just says your amortized spend this year is X and last year was X, but you don't know what players were for how much of those things. And so on that basis, you won't know what's left next year until you get to next year. And so just to keep it simple and to not bore you, I just wanted to show you the nuts and bolts, right? So how did I get to 70 million? Oh, sorry, 80 million as a fee. So net spend of 53 million last year, 111. I went back and looked, and the year before that it was 60.7 million. So wages on the third year, right? You go 3 years ago, but this was when the UEFA rules allowed you to spend 90%. This was 80%, and this year was 70%. So 53.2 million, which as a percentage of the revenue is 10%. So you add 10% to 42%, and you get to 52%. Remember, your limit is 70% if you're playing in Europe. Agents fees, you have to go all the way back. I'm not sure if I've got it in my scene, but I did all the details. So I haven't done it recently, but I did it last year. I got all the data around the agents fees from somewhere. I forget where I got the source from, but it took me ages to find it. Into the 22-23 season, we spent 20 million pounds on agents fees. The year before that, 14. The year before that, I think it was like 17. And I think so. I've thrown in 15 million as an estimate. It could be up a million or down a million, but it's around that amount. So that's 3% equals 55%, right? Which leaves you with 15% of the wiggle room between the revenue that you have and the 70% number of it, and 15% of 528 million added on to the 369 equals a space, a wiggle room of 79 million pound. And it's lo and behold, before I knew any of that, before I'd seen the numbers, obviously for the last month, I've been talking to you guys that I believe that Tottenham have a wiggle room of about 80 million pound. Now, it's not, I don't want to sit here and claim this is accurate because it isn't, because these numbers are based on last year, and next season being in the Champions League will be based on this year's numbers, which we don't have access to. But in a nutshell, when people say, where do you come up with the transfer budgets? I get asked this all the time on Twitter. Where do you come up with these numbers that you claim are so, like, you're always within a few percentage points of? That's how you sort of figure it out, right? It's pretty simple to figure out what the kind of benchmark, the wiggle room is. And then from there, you can then make assumptions and leaps based on what you know that hasn't been yet articulated on next year's accounts that you're not aware of, but you're aware of because of what's in the news and what's being accounted for. And like I said at the start of this video, there's a lot of things that are going to be adding to the revenue next year at Tottenham, like the additional 15 or 17, whatever it is, the doubling of the non-match day events. But a lot of things that are also going to be taking away from it as well, such as Premier League revenue from finishing probably 13th or 14th or something, right? And possibly no European football. This year's European football, you get the additional 2 games. And hopefully Tottenham will, if we go far, if we get to the semi-final, the prize money can step up. Obviously, you've got the inflationary factors, right? The cost of putting on the operations. We're playing more games at home this year. Last year, we had 9 games fewer than the year before when we got to the last 16 of the Champions League, which is a 25% fewer games at home. So 25% less match day income. But also you have to factor in that the cost of operations was down as well as a net, because you're putting on fewer games, but the cost of operations on a per match basis went up because the cost of doing business has gone up because of the cost of living, right? Inflation, economy, all that stuff. And those things haven't really changed, have they? Let's be entirely honest. Tottenham Hotspur are going to have to pay, I think do Tottenham employ something like 500 people, is it? If they are full, I'm sure they're not, but if they are full-time employees, then that's an extra £5 million just in national insurance alone because of the new £1,000 extra that you have to pay. So, is that right? Yeah. So, lots of things will change, but ultimately, I believe that Tottenham should expect to have, as it stands, based on those numbers, not knowing the differences between this year, an extra £80 million of wiggle room. If Tottenham aren't in Europe next year, then obviously the 70% thing isn't a problem. And then all you have to do is make sure that you don't lose any more than £35 million a year over the last 3 years per year, £105 million net. And that is, not net, £105 million in total over the 3-year rolling period. And that's not a problem for Tottenham. So Tottenham can spread their wings if they want to dip into their reserves, right? But in order to do that, you have to have an owner that's willing to have a little bit more ambition than he has done. And that is why I think that Daniel Levy will sell, if he can, Christian Romero this summer. And the news out today is that Daniel Levy wants £100 million for Christian Romero, which we had this argument in the week, didn't we? Last week, we went through this on ad nauseum with you guys around whether you think we can get I think I valued Romero at £75 million on my net zero transfer spend idea. A lot of you guys were saying it's too little. Some people were saying too much. If Daniel Levy wants £100 million for him, I think it would be interesting. I don't think he'll get it, but I think the 75 million is reasonable. But I do actually think that Daniel Levy is probably going to look for, cashing in, I think he's going to start to pivot some of his approach to some of these assets. I think that the inability to rely specifically on footballing income, and he's kind of maxing out the juice for the squeeze. He's getting as much juice as he possibly can out of that stadium. I know there's a few more events going in and stuff, but there's other things we've got to pay for. We've got to pay for these hotels, got to pay for the training ground, got to pay for all this stuff. And we haven't got the money from that because we haven't got the investor yet. So to me, I think that Daniel Levy is going to start to look at the playing squad and start to, try to make a little bit more ends meet out of those players. And that is why I asked the question of Johnny. And it took me like an hour to get round to actually kind of getting an answer from him. And he was reasonable and said he doesn't know. I'll ask you the same question, guys. How do you judge the success or failure of the pivot towards a youth-centric approach? Is it purely judged and based on how many of these players make it into Tottenham's first team? Or is it on some level based on raising revenues from selling players that are good enough for a professional contract and a career in football, but not good enough for Tottenham? And I think that there's probably loads of people in the Tottenham youth system that are more than good enough to go on to have a career elsewhere, but that are not good enough for Tottenham's first team. I'm not going to call out names because not that they watch this show, but there's probably going to be some people that that we'll forget about and that you'll consider it a failure. But if you can make £10 million by selling whoever, like Troy Parrott's an example of that, or Dane Scarlett. I don't know how much you'd get for Dane Scarlett. Let me know in the comments. Do you think we could get £10 million for Dane Scarlett? He's British, right? Homegrown, good player. Do you think he's good enough? I don't think he's good enough for the Tottenham. I think we're wasting our time waiting for this guy to develop. I know that Harry Kane was a slightly late bloomer. I just don't think Dane Scarlett is going to make it. For some reason, I just got a gut feeling I could be wrong about that. But I would imagine that you could probably get some decent coin for him. What about Will Lancashire? What about Tyrese Hall, Kyra Martin, Alfie Dorrington, Ash Phillips? Are all of these players really going to break through? I would say no. Some of them might. Some of them will be Oliver Skip level kind of assets, but I very much doubt that more than one or two of these players will be first team players for the long run. I think Jamie Donnelly will. I hope Mikey Moore will. I would hope Mason Melia. He seems to be really, really, really well touted. I spoke to a guy. What game was it? The day of the protests, I went to a pub and I bumped into an Irish crew that was sat at a table, and they come up and said hello. They watched the channel, and they were saying, "Oh, in Mason Melia, we've got a monster." And I said, "What are we talking about here? Is it Troy Parrott level monster, or is it like Evan Ferguson level monster, or are we talking like a Wayne Rooney level monster?" And they were like, closer to Wayne Rooney than Evan Ferguson. And these guys know they are. I think they're like season ticket holders at St. Partick, is it, or St. Patrick? So obviously the Irish love to, stick to them. Big up the Irish. Come on, you. Was it Coy BIG or something? Come on, you big Irish guys or something. We say Drew's saying, "I'd take 100 million for 5 kids to keep things ticking over. Other clubs have no issue doing it. City are a prime example of exactly, mate. City have been doing this for years, mate. City have been doing this for years. They can buy whoever they want for whatever they want, and there's no real problem. They're never going to have a problem with that. If they get away with, and by the way, that whole thing is apparently due any time now. The answer there. City are the masters of it, right? If they get away with that FFP thing, the 115 charges, they will. They'll never have another. Excuse me. They'll never have another FFP problem again, because they've got this well-oiled machine of buying up everyone that's young and wherever they are in the world with through one of their sister clubs, and then come on, you boys in green. There you go, Paddy. There you go, Paddy. Let me know, mate. Do you watch St. Patrick, or is it St. Patrick or Partick? I'm not sure which one it is. Good to see you, Paddy. Let me know. Is Mason Melia all that? Is he like as are we really onto something here? Is he potentially a new Harry Kane? Is he really that good? Yeah, come on, you big Irish guys. To be honest, boys in green makes a lot more sense. Oh dear. St. Patrick's, there you go. Yeah, St. Patrick. Let me know. Was he? How good are we talking here in a hype, or anyone that knows the game, anyone that knows him over there? Pause indeed. Where did we get to? So I wanted to show you some of this stuff. So very difficult finance. Man United may struggle. So there's a story here about Man United struggling to get the finance for a £2 billion stadium. All right, they're a club that's in a mess, an absolute mess. I want to get this story about Tyler Dibbling to Man City. Apparently, Tottenham can forget about Tyler Dibbling because £100 million is what Southampton want for the player, and I mean, I don't think he'll get anything like £100 million. Obviously, he's a good player, isn't he? He's a very, very talented player, English as well. Good-looking kid, but he ain't going to Tottenham for that money. No chance, no how. What's interesting, I've got this story for you here. Let's see if I can get this up for you. Pause. How are we doing? Here we go. Let's change this thing. Share this game. So Chelsea could be heading for a change in ownership if Todd Boehly and Begdad Eghbali failed to agree on the club's plans for the future. The relationship between the Stamford Bridge chiefs was understood to have deteriorated earlier this season, with the pair reportedly looking to buy each other out. I'll buy you out. No, I'll buy you out. This is one of those, like, who's got the deeper pockets, who's got the bigger dick pissing contest, isn't it? I'm not letting you buy. You buy me out, okay? 10 billion. Ridiculous. The takeover talk has gone quiet in recent months as Chelsea go in pursuit of a return to Champions League football next season. Blueco, which is spearheaded by Boehly and Eghbali, purchased the club from Abramovich for $4.25 billion in May 2022. In an interview with Bloomberg, Boehly admitted that Chelsea owners could go their separate ways if they can't agree on the future of Stamford Bridge. The London Giants are considering plans to either leave the existing stadium or expand, with Earls Court viewed as a possible location for a new facility. This will be fascinating, guys. I'll tell you why. Because Abramovich, before the Ukraine war, Moneybags Abramovich, was going to fund somehow the new stadium, but he shelved the new stadium at Stamford Bridge because of the cost of doing the cost of the stadium. Right? He said it's too much, and this was just after Tottenham did theirs. So Tottenham again, Daniel Levy doesn't get the credit. Well, I think to be fair, Daniel Levy does get the credit for the stadium. So I'm not going to sit here and claim that people don't give him the credit. He does. And I think most people are fair and say that he did negotiate well that loan, the mortgage, but he didn't. I think actually some of the Levy haters give him a little bit too much credit for that part. I think they give him too little credit for others, but I think they give him a little bit too much credit for the 2%, 2.8%, whatever it was, deal on the mortgage, because I think a lot of that is timing and luck rather than prescience. Right? Nobody knew that the Ukraine war was going to happen. Nobody knew COVID was going to happen, and a lot of the shit that we're facing now, and the interest rates and the horrendous amounts of the cost of borrowing being what they are and what they have been over the last 24 months. Well, people look at that and then go, Daniel Levy's a genius because he's secured all that funding long term into the headwinds of what we're now facing. But he didn't know these things were coming. And it wasn't as if low interest rates were a new thing in 2019. They'd been low since 2008 from the financial crisis. They've been at near zero for 10 years. So, yeah, there you go. There's something for you, Levy outers, if you're watching this. You don't have to give him as much credit as you do, even though you're doing it through gritted teeth. You don't have to give him as much credit as you do for the long-term debt arrangement, because a debt of that size for a stadium is going to be a long-term debt. It's a mortgage, and he's only getting the plaudits he is because comparatively of what's changed now, and the comparative and the recency and the proximity to when he signed it versus now what you'd have to pay. But he didn't know those things were coming. He didn't get in front of that stuff. That's just pure fortune. So there you go. Take that and work with it in front of your audience. By Sean Dream Logic. We should keep Ange because he's doing his job. No Europe, but entertaining the fans. Do you want to come on? Do you want to come on, box office? We're not even talking about Ange. But if you want to come on, I don't mind. If you want, let me know if you want to come on, bro. You're always saying to me how you don't get to come on my show anymore. I don't have your number, bro, so I can't communicate with you. But now you've reached out. All I said, by the way, about the Ange thing was I actually am Ange out for what it's worth. I don't think he's good enough, but I think that just if you win the Europa League, you're not just doing your job, are you? You've absolutely smashed it, and he's done the things that no one else in Tottenham's recent legendary managerial options have done. So I think that should be rewarded. And if it's not rewarded, then I don't really know what the hell we're doing. Like I just think it's like I hear people say like next year will be a write-off if you give him the job. I get it. But I just make the argument as well that like I think that you could see a material change in the energy around Tottenham from being the perennial losers to being like, we got it done. We fucking did it. Suddenly you got this young group of talent that is like well ahead of their own plans to be a Europa League winner. Half the team is like less than 22 years old, 23 or under. Most of them are. And then to have a Europa League in their locker at that age, like, come on. Like, those guys are going to be cocky as fuck. And they would buy into Ange's system because they won under it. You know? I just think you'd see a materially different version of Tottenham next year. If you won the Europa League, I mean, the two outcomes can happen. One is you get the, like, well, what's next thing? And then you just, like what happened with Manchester City, where, like, they won the three-peat, they got the four-peat or whatever, and it's like they won the Champions League, and then they kind of went, like, what else can we do? And then that coupled with injuries and coupled with an aging squad, and you know that you saw what happened this season. But so there's the outcome, like where people just get like the exhaustion and they just it's too much. But I actually think that that's not going to happen with Tottenham. I think that you've got such a young squad that if it actually did happen, I think that for the most part, YouTube would always be toxic. YouTube would always have these arguments and these silly little squabbles or whatever, just because people want to be people. But for the most fans, there'd be a bus top parade. You can't sack Ange. You can't have an open bus parade down the Seven Sisters High Road on the Monday and then sack Ange on the Tuesday. I just think that the only rationale for why you'd sack him anyway is because you just think that there's absolutely no excuse whatsoever for what else has happened this season. And I think that there are meaningful excuses. And I think also you could make the argument that you should see. And by the way, this is another one of this double talk, because I hear this all the time, right? The amount of examples of people that say one thing and then move the goalposts. The amount of people that say sack Ange anyway. We're not going to make the Europa League, so sack him, which is fine. But if you do win the Europa League, sack him anyway, because look what happened with Juan de Ramos or whatever, or just like he's terrible. Aren't those same people? Most of them, not all of them. Obviously, I'm not going to carpet bomb. But a lot of people say, well, you sacked, the worst thing we did was sack Pochettino. You should have backed him, not sacked him. But if they're using the logic of, look how shit the season was, the season we got to the Champions League final, we were awful in the league that year. Awful. Not as awful as this year, but pretty bad. And the year after the Champions League final, we were shit as well. Absolutely shocking. Losing 7-2 to Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Wait a minute, actually, how did we get to the Champions? Were we in the Champions League the year after? Did we finish fourth in that? Hang about. Clarify this for me, people. Clarify this for me. The year after the Champions League final, were we still in the Champions League? I'm pretty sure we were, weren't we? Didn't we lose 7-2 to Bayern Munich? But why do I then feel like in the league that we actually got to the Champions League final, we had a terrible league campaign? What's going on? My memory's going weird here. Someone let me know. Tottenham league finishes. So here we go. 2018-19, we finished fourth. So we got to the Champions League final and we finished fourth. Then why do I have it in my mind that we were shit that season? And the year after we finished sixth. The year after seventh, then fourth, then eighth, then fifth. I think I've just exposed myself here. I was dead set that we had a shit year the year we got to the Champions League. Anyway, let's have a look. What are we saying here? Mr. Box Office, by Sean Dream Logic. Oh, we've done that one already. Do you know what happened to the £100 million that ENIC invested in 2022? If we spent was meant to be announced to the FTSE 100, if my memory serves me. So they don't have to announce to the FTSE 100. It would have been, if they were still on the market, it would have been on the alternative investment market, but they're not on the alternative investment market. They're delisted. So they still have to announce it to shareholders, but not in the same fashion or form. They took the £100 million and it was just like absorbed into the costs of doing business. They didn't take the last 50. Well, we need to compare our interest rates to the rates other clubs are paying, and then it just doesn't look good or genius anymore. Or it depends on the format, right? Because of the whole wiggle room now with the third party transactions thing. The Manchester City won that deal, so that court case. So it basically now has opened the door again for more legal lawsuits. In that clubs would have had to have were refused the ability to borrow money from their owners without putting reasonable interest rates on. But if the third-party transactions was deemed unlawful, if that law was deemed to be incongruent with the general commerce law, then so too would probably be the rules on shareholder loans. And so, yeah, that's what I'm saying, Mark. I know I've just realised that's not the case, so I retracted it, mate. But I seem to remember us being shit in the league that year. I don't know why.
Maybe it was just because of expectations. We had that wonderful team and we were kicking on. I don't know. Maybe because the couple of years before we were finishing second and third and stuff, weren't we? In 2017 against Leicester, we finished third. We turned shit mid-season, that Champions League season, relegation form for a year through 2 seasons. Yeah, that's right. We didn't win away from home, right, in like 15 months or something. More. Yeah, that's right. There you go. I knew there was something that was terrible about it. Paul Lawrence, I agree with your analogy if we win the Europa League, but I just don't trust Postecoglou. However, maybe it's time to stick rather than twist right now. For me, it's pretty simple. Very simple. I just think that in life, you earn things, you deserve things, you get things. If you don't, no popularity contest. I don't care if you're good enough, you're old enough, all those things. I just think that if you like put aside the bollocks and just say, like, would you as a football fan, as a Tottenham fan, deemed the season a success if we missed out on Europe via the league? Because basically that's it, right? Whether you finish 8th or 18th or 17th, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, you're missing out on a bit of revenue points from where you sit in the league, but ultimately 8th to 17th is the same. You're not playing in Europe for the league. But if you did that, and then you also got into the Champions League via the Europa League winning, and you lifted Europa League, that's a good season. Even though I personally will remember it being a fucking rubbish season, all bar a couple of games in the Europa League. If we get there and win it, that's why I was always this. I was never the proponent of this idea that top 4 isn't a trophy. I'm like, okay, but it also does represent where you're at, right? Because you can't get lucky, and it's every week. And people saying it's all about winning. It's all about lifting a trophy or nothing. Trophy equals success. No trophy equals failure. Well, on that basis, then this would be a successful year, even though most of us would think of it as an absolute disaster. All right, obviously, this is predicated on lifting the trophy, which is still a big if. But if we did, then those people, like the league gunners of the world, should be honest and say Tottenham was successful this year. I'd love to hear his take. I would love to get Lee Gunner on and see what he says, because he is someone that when he sticks to his guns on it, and fair play to him, that anything other than a trophy is failure. And I think that's just a crazy way to assess where you're at. It's too simplistic, but that's his take, and that's fine. But on that basis, this would be a successful year. And on the seasons when you finish 4th, even though you feel like you're well in it every year, and most games, most weekends, you're coming away with the 3 points, like that's a good feeling throughout the season. To finish 4th and having seen your team win 70% of the games or whatever, that feels like a good season, even though you don't lift the trophy. Whereas this one, you lift the Europa League and it's a successful season, but it's been a miserable fucking time. That's where I just disagree, because as a football fan, I want to use Tottenham time as a way to like feel good about things that I don't have any control over. I want to be able to participate in something where it's not up to me, it's up to them. Over to you guys, but I'm invested, I'm buying in, I'll support you, but let's do it. But if you lose most of the games like we have done this season, but you go on and you lift the Europa League, it's a successful season, and you can't sack the guy. You can't sack the guy. I just find it like the notion that people would say you'd sack him anyway. I'm like, what do you want? Like, what, on that basis, what can anyone do that will impress you other than you have? So now it's a case of top 4 is not a trophy, but anything but top 4 is not enough. So you want top 4 and you want a trophy, and that's the only way that you'll be even remotely satisfied. And even then, that's only okay 1 year. Because the next year we better be after a title. We better be going for a title. I don't know. Crazy. What are we saying here? Spurs GCTV. Good evening, Sean. Good evening, Spurs GCTV. Good to see you. We were shit for most of the year. We had a great start. That's all. There you go. Bit like last season, right? There is no more excuses from Ange. Most players are back. They're all rested. Let's see if he can do what he says he can do. Yeah. I've got to say, though, I think that sometimes when you are, as I believe he is, a salesman, I think eventually you're kicking the can down the road with your excuses and your explanations and saying the things that, you know, that you want to hear. Like, or you wait until this isn't a problem anymore. You wait until I get, you know, oh, I've been unwell, boss. That's why I wasn't on my A game last week in the sales. But once I get this migraine out of the way, once I get my taxes done, once my new car is arriving, once I get my new suit, there's always something that is responsible as to why you're not at your best. Eventually, those excuses run dry. My dog ate my homework. You run out of excuses, and eventually, it's time to put up or shut up. And if he is the salesman like I think he is, I think it will be a shut up. But like I say, regardless of any of that, if we, by hook or by crook, if we end up with that big fucking trophy in our cabinet next year, you have to give him the start of the season. You have to. I think it would be madness. But do I then think he'll go on and kill it next year? No, I think he'll be gone by Christmas. It'll be the Poch season all over again, sort of thing. But just you don't know that for a fact, and on the off chance that him lifting it just materially changes the energy at the club and the confidence in these players just goes from here to here, and then anyone that doubted him as a winner suddenly goes, well, actually, he said it. He said, I win in my second season, and you know what? He wasn't bragging. He was right. Suddenly, that confidence, that belief, that buy-in, he gets his swagger back. Ange Postecoglou, the geezer with the funny, the nice style, the guy who's hilarious when he's in a good mood but miserable in a bad mood. You'll see more of the hilarious version of him, and all those things are good. And I think that you have to give that a chance to see whether or not it might be it might play out in a positive way. Do I think it will? Probably not. But I think that to assume that it won't and sack him anyway after being the most successful guy in 45 years is just crazy. I think so. What's Matt saying? Europa League week, flight to Bilbao Monday, light training Tuesday, win the Europa Wednesday, celebrate Thursday, sack Ange Friday, hire new manager Saturday, and chill on Sunday. Yeah. Imagine if they got the timing wrong. They did whatever's going on with Donald Trump's cabinet, and they invited him into like you got Johan Langer, Scott Munn, Daniel Levy, and Paratici in a group chat on Signal, and Ange somehow gets invited in by mistake, and they've already fired him by lunchtime on Thursday. He lifts the cup, he gets fired, and then we have a bus parade with the trophy and all the players, and the new manager is participating, but he's kind of sat at the back because it wasn't his trophy, he wasn't a part of it, but he feels like he's got to be there for a team event. That would be fucking hilarious. Anyway, guys, have I got anything else to tell you about? Let me see. So the Nuno's saying that it's changing. The gap no longer exists in such a predominant way. Us as clubs, besides the big six, have been able to improve and compete. It's a question of recruitment, and the competition itself makes players reach a high level when they get to the Premier League. You're not really saying too much there. You're just saying, yeah, more money, buy better players. It is a question of recruitment, and that's for sure the biggest area that Daniel Levy needs to improve. Or if he can't find the ambition to fucking push money around on a plate and then pull the money out of Joe Lewis's arsehole, then sell the club, because the competition isn't getting easier, it's getting harder, and this FFP thing isn't making the impact that it was supposed to, at least not in the way we thought it was. Any other news for you? Not really there. Let's close that one down. Alejo Veliz apparently has said that he doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to go to Argentina. Marcelo, listen, let me ask you that. Last question for you. I remember us all talking about Marcelo Gallardo. Remember him, the River Plate manager who won everything, serial winner. When we were we talking about Gallardo? Was it before Ange, or was it before Nuno, or was it before Conte? I forget when it was, but Gallardo was the name on a lot of people's lips because of his successes. And I remember people like, yeah, I want Gallardo. Don't know anything about the guy. Don't know anything about him at all, but I want him. Not seeing too much of him anymore, are we, on the list of players? Anyway, he wanted to bring Alejo Veliz back to Argentina, and Veliz said, no, I want to stay and fight for my place, which you've got to respect. But I haven't seen too much in the way of successes. I don't think there's too much else, guys. So yeah, look, I want to just reinforce this message, guys. Basically, that's how I came to the 70 or the 80 million pound kind of wiggle room number. And also, Daniel Levy, mate, you know, these clubs are going to continue to do what they do. Look at Chelsea's numbers. They're insane. And you know, Arsenal have got a really impressive, imagine how much money Arsenal could raise, bearing in mind that their ladies team fills out the Emirates, right? Or it gets close to it. Ours doesn't. But theirs does, right? So their team is like impressive. Same with Chelsea. Well, Chelsea's already sold theirs, but like Arsenal, I think some of these other clubs are going to do some shenanigans. And so I just feel like there's a, it's going to continue. It's going to continue. So forget about FFP catching up with any of these clever teams at the top. They might catch up with some of the smaller teams at the bottom, but all that does is, unsettle players that we don't really want, right? I was seeing people saying, oh, you know what? Tottenham needs to go and get Oliver Glasner and then also go and get half of their team. Go and get like Gahey, Eze, and Adam Wharton. And to be honest, all three of those players are brilliant. Right, love them all. But that's 25% of their starting 11. Are we that bad that we look at teams like Crystal Palace and want half of their team to improve ours? Is that a sign of how bad our team is, or is that just a sign of how close the competition is between the the other teams in the Premier League? Would Adam Wharton get into most teams? Possibly. Would Mark Gahey? Probably. Would Eze? Certainly. And that's Crystal Palace, right? A team that usually finishes 14th. So I know that they are the best three players at Palace. But if Crystal Palace have got 25% of their more than 25% of their dream first 11, they're fully fit first 11, the spine of their team that gets into most teams in the Premier League, is that just a sign of like the leveling of the playing field? Is that what Nuno's talking about when he says the gap isn't there anymore? To Tottenham's three best players. Who are Tottenham's three best players? Romero, Van der Ven, and who's Tottenham's third best player in our squad? Sonny? I don't think so. Maybe Sonny. It's not a midfielder. Maddison? Kulu. Decky. Okay, Decky, a good one driving. Would Decky, Van der Ven, and Romero get into the vast majority of first team in the Premier League? Probably. Fulham's best three players don't. West Ham's best three players. Who's West Ham's best three players? Bowen, Kudos, and Soufal. Who do you reckon is the third best player in the West Ham team? Third best player in the West Ham team. Not sure. Anyway, my point being, maybe it's interesting. Maybe if you're looking at like the top three players of every club, do most of them get into a lot of other clubs? Kilman probably, yeah. Oh, Paquetá for sure. Paquetá. Yeah, Alvarez, Kilman. Look, West Ham have got some good players. Do you know what I mean? Maybe the point is just that the gap is closing, that there's a lot of talent out there, and that a hell of a lot of the also-rans in the Premier League have got enough talent to hurt you on their day, and that's the reason why the clubs are taking points from everybody. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I've been going for 2 hours. How did I get 2 hours out of that? Wowzers. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Like, subscribe, and comment. I'll see you tomorrow for another one. Shout out to everyone. Smash the subscribe and that stuff. And get over to Sean Butler TV as well if you haven't already, and hit the subscribe over there. Please hit the like and subscribe on that one. Love you all. Like, subscribe, and comment. As always, bye-bye. Oh, Patrick, you poor bastard. We're just going. Top 4 gun. Hello, mate. Good to see you. Ciao, ciao.